So in today's video, I'm going to be giving my AFC South power rankings post-draft, post-free agency, basically the AFC South off-season power rankings. Now, before we get into the video, please consider liking and subscribing. And in the description down below, if you want to follow me on Twitter, you can do that. That's the best place to keep up with whatever I'm doing. But with all that out of the way, let's jump right into the video. So we are going to power rank the AFC South. Now, obviously, these are all my opinions based off of what they've done in the offseason, what they've done on paper, and how good I think they could be next season. So basically, this is all just my opinion based off of what we know about these teams, whether it's from this offseason, how their season ended last year, and just my opinion on what I think these teams can do. So let's get right into the rankings. Coming in at number 4, we have the Houston Texans. I think the Texans are probably the worst team in the NFL. And I really hate to say that because I really don't like to bash too many teams. I really don't like to bash anybody because I really think that, you can find a good in a lot of teams, but I just think the Texans are a really, really bad football team. Like, I still stand by the fact that I think they're 2, maybe 3 years away from being even considered an average football team, because last year was not good for them. They were not a good football team last season whatsoever, because they had one of the worst offenses, one of the worst defenses in the NFL last year. So really, they just all around weren't a good football team. Now, if we're looking at the bright spots, Davis Mills, I really like Davis Mills. I think he doesn't get talked about nearly enough. I think he's probably going to be one of the better second-year quarterbacks. I do think a guy in his division will be the better second-year quarterback, but I think Davis Mills has the potential to take a leap and become even better than he was last year. Obviously, they have Brandon Cooks there, so they extended him, so that's going to be a nice target for Davis Mills to throw to. But overall, I just think the Texans, they tried in the draft. Literally, they couldn't fail in this year's draft. Like, they needed so many different positions they couldn't fail. They added Derek Stingley on the defense. They added Kenyon Green on the offensive line. So they made moves, obviously, in places that they needed to. But I think Lovie Smith, as much as I like him as a coach, he has an uphill battle next year. It's not going to be easy for the Texans, and I still think that they're going to be probably the last place team, definitely in their division. They may surprise us, but Davis Mills, he's going to have to play out of his mind for the Texans to even be really good next year. He's going to have to play so spectacular. He's going to have to make a second-year leap so big that we've never seen before, I think, for the Texans to even be good. So Lovie Smith, they have a huge uphill battle to climb. But if we're going to look at some positives for the Texans from last year, they swept the Jaguars last year, they beat the Titans, and they beat the Chargers. So there are some bright spots that you can still hang your hat on for this team, and you know that, hey, we may be able to get a couple wins here and there. But I think they're probably going to be the team that's going to have the number 1 overall pick next year. Coming in at number 3 is the team that had the number 1 overall pick in this year's draft, and that is the Jacksonville Jaguars. Now, I made a video discussing them at length and how I think they're still how they were one of the more interesting teams in the NFL, and I still think that stands because I really like what the Jaguars have done this offseason, especially after the disaster that was Urban Meyer last year in Jacksonville. Was not pretty. It was one of the most distraction-filled seasons you probably could have. Them and the Raiders had 2 of the worst seasons when it came to their head coaches. Like, they had disgusting amounts of distractions. So they got rid of that baggage. They got rid of Urban Meyer from last season, which I think was obviously a great move for them. They moved off of him in the middle of last season. I felt bad for Trevor Lawrence all of last year because his development was really hindered because of that. Basically, everything he learned up until probably week 18, he could probably just forget about. Now, if I'm Trevor Lawrence, and I know you can't hang your hat just off of one game. If I'm Trevor Lawrence, if I'm a Jaguars fan, I'm hanging my hat on everything that happened week 18 against the Colts, eliminating them from the playoffs, and Trevor Lawrence showing what he could be in the NFL. I think he's got to hold his hat to that, and I think Doug Peterson was a fantastic hire for the Jacksonville Jaguars. I love the hire. He's a Super Bowl winning head coach, and he did it with a backup quarterback in Nick Foles when he was in Philadelphia. So all in all, what the Jaguars did bringing in Doug Peterson, I really like. So if I'm Doug Peterson, I'm finding what Trevor Lawrence did against the Colts to end last season, and I'm using as much of that to help develop Trevor Lawrence as much as possible. And if I'm Trevor Lawrence, I'm hanging my hat on that because that was great. And overall in the offseason, I thought the Jaguars had an interesting offseason, not necessarily the best, because if we're looking first at the draft, I still think they should have taken Aiden Hutchinson over Trayvon Walker, but Trayvon Walker's from that star-studded Georgia defense from last year, so I think that's going to be a good fit for the Jaguars. He gets to go alongside Josh Allen, who I think is one of the more underrated defensive players in the NFL. He's a really good, solid defensive player. And they added Devin Lloyd at the linebacking position. So overall, what I can say about the Jacksonville Jaguars in this offseason is they tried. They added Christian Kirk as well, Zay Jones, Evan Ingram. They may have overpaid, but I'm not getting into the money talk with this. I think overall they tried. And that's really all you can ask for a team like the Jacksonville Jaguars, who were really, really bad for the majority of my lifetime. Obviously, they had that great run where they almost made it to the Super Bowl, but I believe in 2017. If I'm a Jaguars fan, and I mentioned that in that other video, that you can be at least thankful that your organization has tried when it comes to the free agency and the guys they brought in, trying to get Trevor Lawrence some help. When it comes to the draft, trying to address some needs on the defense and trying to get better through the draft, and then also bringing in a better head coach. If I'm the Jacksonville Jaguars, and I'm a fan of them, which I'm not, I'm just a fan of the NFL, I like what they've done. I think they put the effort and I think they put the work in to at least be a solid team next year. Are they going to make the playoffs? No. Are they going to win their division? Obviously, I don't think that is. I don't even think the Jaguars are even going to win maybe 7 games. But I think overall, there's at least promise that Trevor Lawrence can be better. I think Trevor Lawrence will be the best second-year quarterback in the NFL. But overall, based off the offseason the Jaguars had, I love the moves that they have made. But at the end of the day, they're still one of the bottom teams in the NFL. But I am, like I said, I'm fascinated with this team. Coming in at number 2 is the Tennessee Titans. This might be a bit controversial, and some people may have them at number 1 in their division, which I fully understand. They were the number 1 seed in the AFC last year, so I could understand why putting them up there at number 1 makes full sense. But losing A.J. Brown, I think, is a massive hit for the Tennessee Titans, because what he brought to that offense was something special, if you ask me, because we know that offense is ran off of Derrick Henry running the ball down people's throats, just bullying defense in the run game, and then in those medium situations, getting the ball to A.J. Brown, letting him make plays. I get all of that, but I think what A.J. Brown did in that role was very special, and I think they're really going to miss A.J. Brown after they traded him to the Eagles. I think A.J. Brown is a fantastic player, and Treylon Burks has got massive shoes that he's going to have to fill next year, and I would not want to be in that position. I would not want to be in that situation that Treylon Burks is in, because that is just a very unfortunate situation. And if you look at Ryan Tannehill, who's getting all the headlines this offseason right now because of what he said about Malik Willis, things really aren't the best in Tennessee right now. Is it going to distract them? No, because they have Mike Vrabel, who did an unbelievable job last year with the Titans. They were a team that was injured a lot, and I think what Mike Vrabel did, keeping that team in contention last year, even through all the garbage that he went through, getting them the number 1 seed, winning coach of the year. I like Mike Vrabel as a head coach. So for the Titans, I'm glad that they have Mike Vrabel. But at the end of the day, like, if I'm Ryan Tannehill, if I'm Mike Vrabel, I'm irritated, because I don't know why they traded away A.J. Brown. It never made sense to me. Obviously, his price tag was high, but a player like that, I feel like you have to pay just because he's that good and that important to the offense in the pass game. And I think that's going to be a huge loss for the Titans. That's going to set them back, I think, a little bit. And then obviously with the Tannehill situation with Malik Willis, Ryan Tannehill is going to have a massive chip on his shoulder after that playoff loss to the Bengals, where he played poorly, throwing an interception on his first and last passes of the game. So it's going to be a very fascinating season for the Tennessee Titans. Again, it's a team that, the storylines itself kind of write how you want to watch this team. But right now I have them at number 2, and I'm not doubting the Titans. They have an unbelievable defense with Jeffrey Simmons, Bud Dupree, Kevin Byard. They have an unbelievable defense who was great last year. I love their defense. It's just Tannehill can't be throwing picks like he did, because that is in every indication that if that happens at any point this season where the Titans feel like they can be winning these games and they're not, they will bring in Malik Willis. So I don't want to say this is a distraction-filled team, but this is a team that's going to be very fascinating just because of the dynamic that they have within their organization, within the roster that they have right now. And the number 1 team in the AFC South, I have the Indianapolis Colts. This is going to be a sneakily good team, a sneaky team that might be a Super Bowl contender. And I know that's going to be high praise, but really, they made a good move in bringing in Matt Ryan from the Atlanta Falcons. I like that move. I think it helps out the Colts in an unbelievable way, because after the disappointing season they had last year where they should have beaten Jacksonville hand over fist, that was disgusting. And I can't believe still that they lost to the Jaguars. Again, credit to the Jaguars, as I mentioned earlier in this video, that they were able to do that. But for the Colts' sake, that was a disgusting performance. That was so bad. And Jim Irsay, obviously upset. I don't blame him, because you can't be playing reckless like Carson Wentz did last year. He was solid at times last year. I think Carson Wentz is a pretty good quarterback, and I think he can do good things in Washington because he kind of is on his last chance. So this is really where Carson Wentz is going to have to play his best football. They were a team last year that people were saying that this was a team that nobody wanted to play in the playoffs, to a team that didn't even make the playoffs, and that's so unfortunate. Like, you can't go into Week 18 the way they did and just stink up the joint against Jacksonville, who was a bad team last year. That you just can't do that. That was disgusting. So I understand the frustration with the Colts. But if we're looking at this year, you're not going to get the reckless play that they had with Carson Wentz with Matt Ryan. I think Matt Ryan was great for Atlanta last year. What Matt Ryan did for Atlanta last year, I think it needs to be appreciated a little bit more than it is, because the fact that I think the Falcons had 7 wins last year, they shouldn't have even had that. They were that bad of a football team. And so I think bringing in a guy like Matt Ryan is going to be great for this football team. Like I said, they're not going to get that reckless play. They have an unbelievable run game with Jonathan Taylor, who is the second best running back in the NFL, I think, behind Derrick Henry. That could be a toss-up. I think those two are great. We don't have to get into rankings right now. Those two are just unbelievable players who, Jonathan Taylor, absolute playmaker. They drafted Alec Pierce, who I really did think that the Colts needed another wide receiver on their offense when I was looking at that when they did bring in Matt Ryan, but I think Alec Pierce has a potential to be really good. They have Michael Pittman, so they should have a solid offense, but they have a great defense, a defense that is loaded. DeForest Buckner, Darius Leonard, added Ngakoue, but then they also brought in Stephon Gilmore, who, say what you want, he had a good season when he was with the Panthers last year. Just obviously didn't get it talked about because the Panthers offensively were so bad that they were just a bad football team. So defensively, they're good. Back to the offense, they have Quentin Nelson, one of the best offensive linemen in the NFL. I like what the Colts did bringing in Matt Ryan. I think that takes them over the hump of what happened with Carson Wentz. Obviously, Matt Ryan's not the athlete that Carson Wentz is, but I think Matt Ryan may be one of the more underrated quarterbacks in the NFL. I really like Matt Ryan. I've never once in my life watching football of anything bad of Matt Ryan. I know that the Titans just made the playoffs. They were just the number 1 seed, but I think losing A.J. Brown for them was massive, and I think bringing in a guy like Matt Ryan is huge for the Colts, who were so close last year to making the playoffs. If the Colts made the playoffs last year, I still would have thought that they could have made a deep playoff run, because they had a good thing going late in that season. They really did. They were feeding Jonathan Taylor, and it was working. It's just the disappointing loss last year. They moved off of Wentz, and then they bring in Matt Ryan. Love the addition. The Colts, they are my number 1 team in the AFC South. But give me your AFC South power rankings down below. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Tell me why you agree or disagree. I'm open for open criticism. Give me all of it. I love all of it. I love getting better. I'm here for all of it. The point of this channel is for me to try to constantly improve, constantly get better at the talking points, anything that we're discussing when it comes to any topic that I bring up on this channel. So if you have anything that I can improve these talking points, improve the videos, please give it to me down below. This is just supposed to be a lot of fun, and I'm enjoying doing it. So give me your thoughts down below on my AFC South power rankings, and I'll see you in the next one.